recording. And I think this is actually live on Facebook as well. So hopefully whoever couldn't join on Zoom can watch it on Facebook. But and I think I started it, didn't I? 1 second. Let me make sure I did. In any sense, I'm a registered architect. I'm a fellow of the AIA as well, and so I've been practicing on my own for 15 years, since when my daughter was born. And I became a registered accessibility specialist only because I thought it would be a good way of earning a little bit extra money when times were bad, but also because it seemed like it was less time consuming than architecture. Ends up being that I'm very busy, so it didn't matter. But I love architecture, and I do practice some of it when I get a chance. But essentially, I became a consultant to my fellow architects to make sure that their designs are ADA compliant, etc. I did write a couple of books, and I won't talk about that. You can kind of Google it if you'd like. There's a couple of books about how to apply the ADA, etc. And this was what prompted me to do it, is because there's a lot of kind of odd things that happen in the ADA. Is confusing, and there's things that we don't understand. So hopefully this class can give you a little bit of an overview. And I'm just going to touch on a few things. I'm not going to go over the entire standard. I'm just going to go over some things that I see that are common violations. When I'm, as an inspector, I go to the job site and I see a lot of the same things that are getting built incorrectly. What's nice about being in Texas is that we do have a second pair of eyes looking at our drawings, so that the only time that other people that don't have this, when they don't know that they're not ADA compliant, the only time they know is when they get sued. So we are actually, a little bit better in that we're warning the owner of the building, hey, these are the things you need to fix. And then that way they don't have to get sued and get blindsided because they're not ADA compliant. So hopefully with this, you can educate your clients as well. Okay. And again, this is one of the things that I do need from you. If you're an AIA architect and need the hour to be reported, please put it on the chat what is your AIA number, so that I can, and then if you need a certificate, if you're not an AIA member and you need a certificate, or if you are, send me a message or put it on the chat, your email, and I will report your hour. This is 1 hour of ADA barrier-free hour, and then so that way I can report it for you, and I can also send you a certificate if you need it. Okay, so let's get started. I think we have a few people. So hang on, come on. Okay, so the learning objectives is that we're going to briefly discuss the history of ADA. I'll learn a few tips to pay attention to so you won't have violations. And then I'm going to share some experiences, what I've seen in the site. So in 1991, let me put this little thing over here somewhere. Okay, let me see, this thing's in my way. Okay, in 1991, the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed into law, and it was divided into 5 titles, or 5 sections. The first title is employment, where it says you can't discriminate against people with disabilities when they want to come work for you. And so you have to give them the opportunity to at least interview and possibly get hired if they're qualified. By the same token, if somebody becomes disabled while they're working for you, you can't fire them just because they become disabled. So that's what Title I prevents people from doing, getting discriminated when they want employment. Title II, if you work in a state or local government, with a state or local government, Title II falls into that category, where state and local government programs and services have to be made available. A lot of times, Title II and Title III, which I'll talk about in a minute, how to make the services accessible is to make the building accessible. So that's where Title III comes in. Title III is what we're going to be talking about today. We deal with, as architects, we deal with the ADA Title III, which is that public accommodations and commercial buildings have to be accessible. And then Title IV is the telecommunication infrastructure, which is, things like closed caption that you see on the TV, or some websites that have for the hearing impaired and visually impaired. That's what this is. And then Title V is the one we don't like, is the one that allows lawsuits, and some of them are frivolous, and we don't like that either, but that's what Title V says. So I guess the only way they thought that they could affect change is if somebody gets sued, but we know better. We're architects, and we do the right thing, even though we're not going to get sued, right? So, okay. So again, in 1990 is when the law was passed. 1991, the Title III Accessibility Design Guidelines were passed and published. And then they were being used for a while. After a few years, they realized that there were some things that were misunderstood or missing or not quite right. So they reissued or rewrote the guidelines, and it became the 2004 ADAG. The Access Board is the one that wrote it. Then it just because they write it and publish it doesn't mean it's a law until the Department of Justice gets involved. And so in 2010, 6 years later, is when the ADA standards for accessible design was passed into law by the Department of Justice. And so that was what we do today. So that became effective in March of 2011 and mandatory in March of 2012. And that's what we do today. Okay. So with that in mind, how do we avoid violations? We have to become aware of the changes. There were changes from the old standard to the new standard. From 1991 till 2010, there were changes, and people are still designing with the old standards in mind. So let's see a few that I see that happens a lot. One of the things that used to be allowed was the side reach for operable parts was 54 inches. It used to be, and so a lot of things are mounted at 54 inches to the operable part. And then they changed it to 48 inches. So now, now everything that's installed side or forward approach has to be 48 inches to the operable part. So I see a lot of people that are still installing things at higher than 48 inches. Now, if you have a building that has existing conditions that were done prior to the 2010 adoption, and for example, if I have a bathroom that was done in 2010, and they had the paper towel dispensers mounted at 54 inches, that is a safe harbor, meaning that they are compliant. If they met the old standards, they are currently compliant, even if they're not meeting the new ones. So that's something to keep in mind. Same thing with the bathroom layout. Restrooms were allowed to be drawn and built the way the left little image shows, which is 36 inches from the side wall of the water closet to the edge of a lavatory. It was allowed to be in the maneuvering clearance to the water closet. In 2010, it was decided that that was not enough room for a person to get onto the toilet, so they increased the clearance to 5 feet. Now, keep in mind, what they're dimensioning is not the turning space. Even though it's the same number, the turning space is 5 feet, but the clearance around the toilet is also 5 feet. So there's two separate standards. Okay, that's another thing that's confusing to people. They think that, well, I have a turning circle, so I don't need 5 feet at my water closet. That's not the case. But in any case, what I'm trying to get at is that if your bathroom is built per the 1991 standards, it is a safe harbor. But anything new has to be drawn at the 2010 standards, which is the 5 feet of clearance to an object or an obstruction. Okay. Some other things that happened, the rear wall grab bar. And I want to make clear you understand that the ANSI, the IBC, has a standard that's a little bit different than the ADA. The ANSI standards that's found in the IBC requires that the rear wall grab bar be mounted 6 inches from the rear wall, from the side wall. Well, the ADA makes the rear wall grab bar related to the toilet. So you take the center line of the toilet, and then you would boot 12 inches on the inner side and 24 inches on the transfer side. So that's how you would install, depending on where your toilet is, that's where your grab bar is. And it was a little confusing, and the old standard had a little solid line for the grab bar. That it meant to be clear, but people thought that they could use a 24-inch grab bar, and it's not true. They had to get the 36-inch grab bar. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so another thing how to avoid a violation is to understand why we're doing certain things. So it's not just a matter of following the standards. You have to understand why, because because a lot of times you're gonna get frustrated with why are we doing this, and then you try, maybe not you, but I have been clients that argue with me about why do I have to do this, and I'm going to explain. So one of the things that gaps along the accessible route is one of the things that is confusing for people, because they see the figure that the ADA gives us and it's a grate, right? So if you don't have a grate, then this doesn't apply to you. That's not true. It's really what they said is openings along the accessible route have to follow this guideline, which is no more than half an inch in the dominant direction of travel. And it could be grates, but it could also be expansion joints. It could be control joints and pavers with grout lines. So things that shouldn't be more than, like, let's say you have an existing expansion joint made out of cedar, and this is and it rots away. Well, then now you have a gap that's bigger than half an inch. So you have to maintain your existing conditions as well. It's because a wheel or a caster and the wheelchair gets stuck in the gap or in the opening, and they can't get off out of it. So that's one of the reasons why this is important, because a person in a wheelchair won't be able to get through the gaps easily. Another thing that's misunderstood is, why do we need so much space to maneuver to open the door? So as you know, there's a section 404 that gives you all these different ways of, when you approach a door, you need a certain amount of space at the latch side or and beyond. So the one that's common is the push and the pull forward approach. So we have a front approach to the door, and they require 18 inches minimum, okay, from the latch side, with 60 inches of depth. The reason is because, if you can see my picture of my friend, the feet need that much space to be able to reach the door. That's about 18 inches. And then he'll need about 5 feet to get out of the way of the door and get through the door. So this is why we need so much space to maneuver, and it has to be unobstructed. It can't be any obstructions in that area so that they can be able to get through the door. This is an example of a floor plan that I reviewed. This changing room has, it seems, they weren't dimensioned, but it seemed to have plenty of room, more than 18 inches. But this one had a little bit of a problem where they designed it and there was a column there. So I knew that they were going to have more than or less than 18 inches unless they dimensioned it. And I was for sure. So my little dimension string was like, okay, make sure that this is also 18 inches because this room is a little smaller based on the column being there. So when I go to the field, this is how I measure. I measure from the edge of the door, not the frame, because the frame is part of the wall. So the edge of the door to the obstruction. And it happened to be, when we draw, I'm going to go back to my drawing. When we draw a figure, a little CAD drawing of the lavatory, we're not really drawing exactly the size that we're installing or that we specify. Sometimes we do, but most of the time it's just a block we have in our library and we just stick it in there. The problem with that is that it might be, maybe the one you drew is smaller than the one that gets installed. and then it won't fit. So you want to make sure you dimension either in a general note or on your drawings exactly the amount of the dimension that you want that. And please don't use the maximums and the minimums dimensions, because construction is not perfect and there will be mistakes. And so we want to make sure we have fluff factor. Okay. And so this is basically the reason why I'm showing you this one is because the next figure. This is one that I inspected, and I'm inside the toilet room, and it's a pull side. I'm pulling the door towards me, and the problem was that the distance from the door to the lavatory, even though it's not exactly at the door, was not 60 inches. Okay, and my close-up shows you that it was 40 inches from the door. So if you notice, I need for the pool side not only 18 inches, but for a 60 inches depth, for the depth of 60 inches, or the length of 60 inches. So this lavatory was in my door maneuvering clearance. Basically, a person in a wheelchair could not exit that easily. So one of the things so this was the floor plan that I received from the architect, and they built it this way. I had told them not to do that because there wasn't enough room and there wasn't 18 inches, but they built it like that anyway. And then my solution to them when I got to the field was to swing the door out. Once they swing the door out, then they had only 48 inches because it was a push side approach. So they were able to do both, move the lavatory 8 inches because that wouldn't conflict with the water closet, but also, gave enough room for maneuvering. So that was lucky they had enough room to do that, to swing the door out. Sometimes that's not possible, so that would have been a tricky one. Okay, there is another, I guess, requirement for recess doors, or it's actually a new, I'm not going to say it's not a requirement, but it's something that you're allowed to do now that you weren't allowed to do before. If you have a door that's recessed no more than 8 inches, then you can count part of the recess as your 18 inches. So you don't need to do an additional 18 inches. This is the way it's worded. It's kind of backwards, but basically it's telling you the same thing. It says maneuver when you have a door with any obstruction within 18 inches of the latch side, should be no more than 8 inches beyond the face of the door, then you can have the maneuvering clearance, be part of it, the recess be part of it. Let me show you what I mean. So let's say you have a trash can receptacle right next to the latch, and the trash can receptacle is less than 8 inches. So essentially you have an obstruction next to the pull side of the door, but you can, because it's less than 8 inches, that person can still reach the door handle. So that's allowed. It's allowed to have an object next to the latch side as long as the object is not more than 8 inches deep. And then of course, it also works with thick walls. If you have a thick wall and your door is recessed back, that's really what it was intended for, but it doesn't say just a thick wall. It says any obstruction or object within the 18 inches can be there as long as it's no more than 8 inches in depth. Okay, so doors also, toilet compartment doors also have to follow the same door guidelines. Okay, that's section 404, but there's a little bit of a difference. If you have a door that swings out of the toilet compartment the way it's shown in this figure, you don't need your full 48 inches like you would normally do on a side approach. You can have 42 inches, but that's only in this condition. If you have any other condition, like for example, in this condition, it's kind of hard to see, but this is a corridor, but it's not a corridor, but it's like a path to the end compartment, and they swung the door out. Well, the problem is that the urinal has a little partition that they built that would be in the way of the 18 inches if that was the pull side. So my recommendation was that they can swing the door into the compartment, which is allowed as long as you have 56 inches from the rear wall to the door. So if this toilet compartment, and it's 7'9", so if you do 7'9" minus 36 inches, you have more than 56. So this was probably a good solution for them to swing the door in as opposed to out. That way they don't need to worry about the maneuvering clearance on the pool side. Okay, so this is another one that you want to keep in mind, even though this isn't a good example because there's plenty of room here for forward approach. If you have a 42-inch forward approach, if you this is the one you would follow. You would follow a hinge side. If you have a hinge side approach, then you need 5 feet of maneuvering clearance, and you need 36 inches on the latch side, not 18. So it's actually kind of a hybrid between, if you have enough room for a forward approach, you could have 18, but in this case, I'm assuming you're approaching it on the side and it's on the hinge side. So you could always swing the door the other way. So make the hinge on the opposite side, because and one thing to keep in mind, I'm going to go to this doesn't tell you that the hinge has to be 4 inches away from the partition. It tells you the opening of the door has to be 4 inches maximum away from the corner. So it could be, the hinge could be either on this side or it could be on this side. In other words, it could be on the right or the left, as long as the opening of the door is no more than 4 inches. So that's something subtle that it's not clear. When the figures are not clear, read the text, because then the text will give you guidance. All right, let's talk about slopes at the maneuvering clearance. The figures that I was showing you, those rectangles, have to be 2% slope in all directions. Okay, the reason being is because if I have this, in this case, is an existing building that where the door was higher than the finished floor or the ground floor. The finished floor of the building was higher than the ground floor to get in. So they decided to add a ramp to it. So when they added a ramp, they kind of violated 2 things. They violated the door maneuvering clearance, and they also violated the ramp clearance. Because in a ramp condition, when you have a ramp, you need a flat landing at the top and the bottom of the ramp. So in this case, the landing of the ramp would coincide with the maneuvering clearance of the door. So if this is why this one doesn't work. Okay, so let's see, somehow I'm going to get onto this ramp, okay, and I'm going to go up the ramp and I'm going to reach for the door handle, and somehow I'm going to be able to open the door somehow, and then as soon as I let go, I'm going to roll down. So this is why this doesn't work. So you need somewhere flat to land so that you'll be able to reach the door handle and open the door and then get through. So this one's not a good solution. So remember, anytime that you see these little rectangles around the door, all this area has to be at 2% in all directions. 2% is considered flat, which is like 1/4 of an inch per foot. So that's okay. All right. Let's talk about proper knee and toe clearances. Hopefully at the end, we can unmute and you can ask me questions. I'm going to try to have enough time if we have time. Okay. This is a confusing section as well. The old standard was more confusing. They cleaned it up a little, and this was a little bit better. For the young ones that have never used the old standard was very confusing. So what you need to remember is that all these dimensions, for when you are using a wheelchair, you need to be able to roll underneath objects to reach for something, like a faucet or or soap dispensers, or even outlets, anything that's beyond the surface, or you have to be underneath. So for that to happen, you need a certain amount of knee clearance and toe clearance. What's confusing is this word, 6 inches maximum. Okay, so, and there needs to be between 17 and 25 inches underneath for toe clearance. But the word maximum right here confuses everyone. They always thought that you had to somehow prevent someone from going further than 6 inches. So they would design it that way. That is not this is not a construction figure. You don't follow it for construction. It's just basically for defining what is a toe clearance. A toe clearance can only be defined as toe clearance 6 inches from the edge of your obstruction. Anything else is not considered toe clearance. That's the only reason why this figure exists. So people would actually send me this where you had the 6 inches dimensioned because they thought they had to somehow they thought that was a construction dimension. So it's not. So this is not really required to be 6 inches from the wall, from the back wall. So whenever you see one of your details dimensioned that way, make sure you don't do that anymore because it's not required. The 9 inches is required, but not the 6 inches to anything. It's just basically a definition. So my client sent me this, and I thought it was brilliant. This is actually what a toe clearance definition is. It's 6 inches is toe clearance, and the rest is the home of my little rat. There's no definition for anything else. It's not an obstruction or anything. So don't worry about that. One of the reasons why we need to define what a toe clearance is because pedestal sinks don't have toe clearance. Because for it to have toe clearance, you have to be able to go through the obstruction about 6 inches for it to be toe clearance. The pedestal is my obstruction. And unless you have a very deep bowl that's 17 inches deep, you're not going to get toe clearance in the pedestal sink. So this cannot be used as your accessible lavatory. So let's talk about knee clearance. Okay, knee clearance is in front of your toe clearance, you have your knee clearance, and you have 27 inches of height, then 8 inches at the top and 11 inches minimum at the bottom. So if you have 11 inches minimum plus 6 inches maximum, that's your 17 inches that's required underneath. And that's where that 6 inches. So if you're going to make something deeper, you want to make sure you're giving most of it to the knee and just 6 to the toes. So if I have 20 inches of underneath, I want it to be 6 inches for my toes and what's it, 20 minus 6, 14 inches for my knees. Okay, so that's kind of what they want you to do. Okay, so let's look at the same figure that the same detail. So in this case, they didn't give me any knee clearance except for, they did give me 2'10", and then if I do the math, 2'10" minus 5 will give me 27 inches, so that's okay. But they didn't give me any other dimensions. So when they got built, it got built without the knee clearance. So you see how there's no 8 inches right here. So there's no knee clearance in that sink, even though there's toe clearance, but there's no knee clearance. Okay. So this is actually, even though it's not pretty, this is more dimensioned properly. And I can say that because I drew it. So, but it's 8 inches, it's dimensioned, and the 11 inches. Now, I want you to also pay attention to what I did. This is my misunderstanding of the standards when I was working before I became an ADA compliant, an ADA expert. I used to put a blocking 6 inches for the toe clearance, and that became a problem. I'll tell you why. This is, the dimensions that you have to follow, right? So for the knee and toe clearance, but then reach range also talks about the amount of reach over an obstruction has to be the same as the one on the floor. And I'm going to show you what I mean. Okay, so let's say I have a soap dispenser over the obstruction, right? So if you see my figure, it tells you if what you're reaching for is no more than 20 inches from the edge, you can mount it at 48 inches. If you go between 20 and 25 inches, you have to lower it to 44. So my soap dispenser is now, it's about 20 inches or less than 20 inches from the edge of the counter. So that's probably a good one. But sometimes I don't get any dimensions on my drawings that I review. So I don't know where they're going to put it. So sometimes they don't get it right. Sometimes they mount it too high. And at this point, there isn't a knee clearance. So it's a little bit, tricky. So one of the other things that we do is we like, when we don't have enough room for a diaper changing counter, we actually try to do a vertical counter, right? A vertical, it doesn't take up a lot of room and it works for diapers, for the diaper changing. But the problem is that in order to get a knee clearance underneath the diaper changing counter, I'm going to have to make that reach range has to be 48 inches. And then when I do that, I open it and it becomes very low. So it doesn't work for an accessible counter. This one has the proper knee clearance, but the handle to open it was at 54 inches. So that doesn't work. So when you have a chance to design a diaper changing counter, don't do the vertical one, because that's not an accessible one. It doesn't work well with reach ranges and the knee clearance underneath. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. I thought it was coming up next, sorry. Okay, so if you have an obstructed reach range, like that soap dispenser that I was showing you, the clear floor space underneath has to be the same or greater than what you're reaching for. Okay, so, and I'm going to show you what that means. So if you have, for your toe clearance has to be between 17 and 25 inches. And then if you have a faucet, like I say my faucet is 19 inches away, I have now, and I have that blocking because I think I need that 6 inches to stop somebody from going more than 6 inches. Now I don't have the proper clearance underneath the sink for that. So in other words, here's my reach to the faucet. It has to be the same or greater than the reach. The floor space underneath has to be the same as the reach above. So that's what that reach range tells you. And let me repeat that because I think it was confusing. Under the section 308, under obstructed high reach, it talks about where a high forward reach is over an obstruction, like that faucet, the clear floor space shall extend beneath the element a distance no less than the required reach. So again, the reach to the faucet has to have the same amount underneath. So don't put a blocking there like I drew it, like this one. This one's going to prevent my reach to the faucet to be the same as the clearance under the floor. So this one's better. This one's got this blocking over here, and the blocking is probably a baseboard to hide whatever pipes is underneath, or just to clean it up and make it nice. But sometimes it becomes a problem because I had this issue where I'm reaching for, even at the sensor, if it's not an operable part, but it's the sensor for the hands-free faucet, then you still need to be able to reach it, and the same amount of space needs to be at the floor. So if you notice how they tiled it, it was so nice. They tiled it with the same tile as the floor, but my reach was 21 inches to the sensor, and my floor only had 11 inches to the tile baseboard. So that was not compliant. It wasn't compliant because it didn't have toe clearance. That was 17 minimum, but it also didn't have a reach and clear floor space compliance. So be careful when you dimension, make sure when you're designing that detail that you align your faucet or whatever object they're reaching to with the floor. Okay. When you're doing a side reach over an obstruction, which is different than a forward reach over an obstruction, this one requires your obstruction to be no taller than 34 inches. So it's not that way with your forward approach. A forward approach doesn't have a height requirement or limitation, but a side reach does. So if you have a 36-inch counter and you're making me reach over for an outlet or a switch or anything, it has to be 34 inches high. So I can't have a side reach over a 36-inch counter for an accessible one. If it's redundant and there's other places where I can plug my laptop in or use a switch or whatever, then that's okay. But if it's the only one that I have in the room, it has to be at a 34-inch counter. Okay, a pastor, a priest, and a rabbi walk into a bar because the bar was a protruding object, right? So they hit their head in the bar. So protruding objects is where it's for blind people, people with visually impaired, people that walk around with a cane to detect their way. So there is a rule that says if you're going to mount something above 27 inches and below 80, you have to make sure that it doesn't project onto the circulation path more than 4 inches. Why? Because if I'm walking around with a cane, my cane can only detect objects that are below 27 inches. Well, 27 inches and below. Otherwise, it can't detect it. And because I can't see, I won't be able to feel it, and I might get hurt with it. Now, they made 80 inches the limit because they figured most of us, me included, are less than 80 inches tall. So they're probably not going to hit their head if it's above 80 inches. But unless you're a basketball player. Okay, so let me show you some examples. So TV monitors are notoriously protruding objects. It's not a great picture because it doesn't show you the door, but this TV monitor is mounted on the wall on my way to that door, and it's projecting more than 4 inches from the wall. So that's a problem. And it's obviously above 27 inches. Same thing with old schools that have clocks that are below 80 inches and that are projecting into the corridor more than 4 inches. Those are protruding objects. So corridors are not the only things that are considered a circulation path. So you got to keep in mind the difference between an accessible route and a circulation path. This accessible route is for wheelchairs. Circulation path is for everybody else, pedestrian, who can walk and like we can, like the able-bodied people. So in this case, I drew the context. This is a drinking fountain, a high and a low, and it's inside the vestibule between two restrooms. But the main corridor is in front. But this is so you're going to say, well, this isn't a circulation path. It's in the vestibule. It's out of the circulation path. Well, if I'm blind and I go to this door, to the first door, and I read the sign and it says men's room, I'm going to go tap my cane through the wall. And before I get to the other door, I'm going to hit the high drinking fountain because it's projecting more than 4 inches and the leading edge is more than 27 inches high. So that is my circulation path as a blind person, right? So I have a circulation path between the two doors and it needs to be protected. Otherwise I get hit by the drinking fountain. Same thing with inside. I go inside the toilet room and now I have obstructions or objects that are mounted on the wall along the circulation path to things that I'm going to. So I'm going to the lavatory. There's a paper towel dispenser on the way to my lavatory and it's projecting more than 4 inches. And this happens all the time. We design something, but then the facility manager will say, well, what she designed, what takes me too long to refill, and I need something that's going to last longer so my janitors don't have to keep refilling the paper towels. So I'm going to put this big, massive paper towel dispenser, and then they just put it wherever. So it becomes a protruding object. So there's some solutions that I recommend. If you have a paper towel dispenser, put a waste paper basket permanently on the wall that hangs below 80 inches. Below 27 inches, and that's cane detectable. Same thing with cane detectable aprons for drinking fountains. Most manufacturers have this. It's called a cane detectable apron that just gets stuck underneath the tall one because the tall one is above 27 inches. The low one is usually 27 inches because it's what you need for a knee space, so that would be okay. If you can't recess it, and if they're just sitting on the wall, that's a good solution. Now, don't make more problems with your cane detectable aprons by this contractor, because I don't think it was the architect that did this. The contractor decided every single drinking fountain needs cane detection. So there's two things going on here. First of all, all the low drinking fountains now have cane detection, which makes the knee space go away. So there's no 27 inches anymore. And then they didn't need cane detection because they had wing walls built. See these wing walls? Those were the cane detection. And if you did design rather than construction, we could have prevented either the wing walls or the cane detectable aprons by putting the low drinking fountains outside and the tall drinking fountains inside. So then the low drinking fountains would have been our cane detection. So anyway, those are things that, you know, just don't make any more problems by letting okay, and speaking of the cane detectable apron, when you do a cane detectable apron on the high one, you want to make sure that it doesn't obstruct the knee clearance on the other side. I'll tell you why. This is one of the few places where the standards require the 30 by 48 inch space clearance is centered on the unit. So that means that if you have a drinking fountain, a low one, you need to have the 30 inch by 48 inch centered on the low drinking fountain, which means 15 of it is going to go on the underneath the tall one. So if you put, and the tall one, remember the tall one is for a person who can stand. They're not using a wheelchair, so they don't really need a knee space. So they could technically that apron could go below 27 inches because there's no knee space required. So we think, right? But the problem is that if they're side by side with the low one, part of the knee space is going to be shared by the tall one. So you want to make sure that your apron is aligned with the 27 inches, no more, no less than that. Okay. Other examples of protruding objects is diaper changing counters. So diaper changing counters when it's closed, no problem, right? It's not a protruding object. Let's pretend that this is less than 4 inches. I'm not sure, it might be 6, but let's pretend it's 4. No problem, it's not a protruding object. It's less than 4 inches along my circulation to the compartment. But let's say I'm a busy mom, I go change my baby's diaper, I open the diaper counter and I change it. Now I don't have time, I forget to close it. Now I leave it open and a person who's blind won't see it and won't detect it and they'll get hit by it. So, so what I recommend is if you can put it somewhere that's not along a circulation path, great. But if you can't, mount it so that it's exactly at 27 inches when it's open and now it's detectable. So, and then of course, remember 27 inches is the minimum amount you can have for a knee space. So you don't want to get it lower than that. It has to be exactly at 27 inches. Okay. Let's talk about operable parts. Operable parts, how much time do I have? Okay, I'm running out of time. Well, I mean, we started late, so I'll do a little bit more. Okay, operable parts are the components that operates an element. Okay, so like I use it to operate something, either opening a door or a faucet or anything that I'm operating is got an operable part. And it says that it cannot be, it can't be used with two hands. It has to be one hand operation, no tight grasping, pinching or twisting of the wrist to operate, and it can't be more than 5 pounds. So let's say a switch, no problem, right? A switch, you put it 48 inches, no problem, but your electricians don't understand the concept of operable parts and reach ranges. So they will put their switches at 48 inches to the middle. But in this case, this rocker switch, have you ever pushed the rocker switch right in the middle? It doesn't operate it. It only operates the top and the bottom, right? So at this point, it's 49 inches to the top, which is the operable part. So we have to educate our electrical engineers or our electricians that they have to do it lower than that. If they want to put it in the middle, that's fine, but make it 45 inches to the middle or something so we know that it works. Beware of cut sheets. Cut sheets will put on this little ADA symbol because they want to sell units. But this one, and it says, yeah, it's accessible if you mount it at a certain height, but this only is operable by twisting that wheel. And I promise you it's more than 5 pounds. So I'm twisting my wrist to operate it, and it's more than 5 pounds. It's really hard, and it's not an accessible unit, even though the marketing people at this company said that it was accessible. So beware of cut sheets. Same thing with this one. This one is no longer in the market as the accessible unit. So they actually went ahead and changed it. But this is required tight grasping and pulling, and that wasn't accessible either. All right, quickly talk about grab bars. A sidewall grab bar, it's important for you to mention the 54-inch minimum because your contractors get confused with the 12 inches maximum. They think, oh, it's a maximum, I can put it anywhere, whatever, but then they do, and this beautiful mosaic tile had to be tore up because they put it too close to the rear wall and they didn't give me the 54 inches. It was 50 inches instead. So that was a problem. Same thing with what you put on top and the bottom of above and below the grab bar needs to comply. So if you're putting a toilet paper dispenser above the grab bars, I'm gonna go back to my figure, it has to be 12 inches above the grab bar. So, hi Bianca and little girl. Anyway, there's only 3.5 inches of clearance between the top of the grab bar and the bottom of the toilet paper dispenser, so that's not accessible. Same thing with if you have a tank, it needs to have 1.5 inches below, and there's not enough room to grasp. We talked about the 60 inches at the water closet, so I won't talk about that again, but just keep that in mind. Also, this is important, and I'm almost done. I think this is almost to the end of my slides. The toe clearance requirement, I'm gonna go, I think one more, yeah. So there's a requirement for a toilet compartment to have, and this is a different toe clearance than the ones at the sink, okay? This is toe clearance, you're inside the toilet compartment and I have to maneuver to turn around because there's a toilet in my way. You don't need a 60-inch circle turning space. So you only need 5 feet by 5 feet, more or less. But so what they do is they say, okay, you can stick out your toes 6 inches to kind of maneuver, right? So they do what they say that's what you need toe clearance, 9 inches high and 6 inches minimum of the ability to go through. So what happens when you have a very nice floor to ceiling toilet compartment? There's no toe clearance. Sorry, hang on. There's no toe clearance. So what they say is that if you have this condition, bring in the 6 inches inside. So instead of it being 5 feet, it's now 5'6". And instead of being 62 for a wall mounted or whatever, then 65 or whatever. So you have to bring in the 6 inches into the toilet compartment when you have a hard wall one. And I know that it's confusing. I'm not going to talk about this, but there is a difference between a toilet compartment and a toilet room. So toilet compartments are inside a toilet room. So if you have multiple toilets that are within compartments, and then it's inside a toilet room. Where you have a single user toilet room, it's not a toilet compartment, and it has different requirements, doors and things like that. So this was a toilet compartment inside a bathroom, inside a gang bathroom. Okay, handrails need to be extended 12 inches in the direction of the path of travel. So this is actually the last thing I'm going to talk about. This is important for you to know. Don't use maximums and minimums when you dimension. Okay, I frustrate my people when I go to the field, and 18 inches is a minimum amount you need for the maneuvering clearance. And then I put on my tape measure and I go, you guys, this is 17 inches, but it's just 1 inch off, so it's no big deal. And so, yeah, it's a big deal. So make sure that when you dimension, don't say 18 inches, say, you can put 18 inches minimum to cover yourself, but give it a little bit more. Give it 19 inches, because if you put 19 inches, then if they're an inch off, they're still good, right? So don't draw just to the maximums or minimums. Same thing with where to put your wall. This is a 5 inch or 4 3/4. 4 3/4 is 3/4 inch difference, but it's a difference. Same thing with grab bars. This is a 53 and a little bit, or 53 1/4. This one drives me crazy. The dimension of the height of a counter is 34 maximum. Okay, and I go out there and almost 35. This is 34 and 3/4. And then they get mad at me because I'm like telling you, well, it's wrong. I mean, I don't have good eyes. Okay. So if it's an eighth of an inch off, I'm not going to know, but I can see the difference between, 34 and 30. It's like, this is obviously the 34 is right in the middle of the counter. So, so make sure that when you dimension, don't dimension. I went to an inspection yesterday and it was like, they were giving me a heart attack because they did it exactly at 34 and exactly at 27. And I'm like, you guys are killing me. I mean, they got it right, but I was like, oh, please, please be right. So anyway, I don't want to tear things up for no reason. Okay, so the whole reason why we're doing this is, why do we pass this? Is because we want to encourage and promote the rehabilitation of people with disabilities. We want to eliminate unnecessary architectural barriers for people with disabilities. We also want to restrict the ability to engage in gainful occupation. And the more importantly, we want to give them achieve the maximum personal independence. They all want to do things on their own. They don't want to be a burden. So we make this environment easier for them to navigate so they can feel good about, and we feel good too. So that's my presentation, you guys. You can unmute if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them in the time that we have left. So any questions? Did you guys do it on the chat? Maybe, let me see. But if you wanted to, you're welcome. You're welcome. If you really want to unmute and ask some questions, that's fine. Oh, thank you. Okay. Anything you guys want to ask?
Hey, excuse me, I have a question. Hi. I'm sorry about the noise in the background. There's a couple kids in another.
Oh, it's okay. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, just kind of a quick question. So obviously this is all kind of new construction work, right?
No, it's actually new construction and alterations. So,
well, right. So
commercial.
I know that in regards to applicability, basically, and I'm not totally up on my ADA codes. I'll admit I've been doing a lot of residential work lately.
Okay.
But isn't there kind of a threshold in terms of a percentage of the construction cost or the assessed value or something?
Great idea. Great question. So great question. So no, there is. You're right, and you're right, and you're right, and it's confusing. So because it's a civil rights law, there's no threshold and there's no grandfathered clause. So what the Department of Justice says is that everything has to be accessible, even if it's existing buildings, old ones, new ones, everything. But there is a caveat. They give you a little bit of a leeway saying and where you're getting the little threshold is, there's an exception that says, if the amount of money to upgrade, to bring things up to ADA compliance is more than 20% of your construction cost of that one project you're working on, then we'll consider it disproportional. I mean, you can basically take the disproportionality rule and say, this is disproportionate amount of, it's too expensive and it costs too much money for me to do this. Can I postpone it? So it does say, the Department of Justice said that you want it to be accessible as is readily achievable. Okay, so, and that's the word they use. It's readily achievable is subjective. Who knows what is readily achievable except for them? So they see it as like, if you're a Hilton, okay, if you're a Hilton and you have a lot of money and your hotels have to be accessible because it's readily achievable for the Hiltons to fix their hotels. So, but to a public school that doesn't have a lot of money, so the public schools, it may not be readily achievable. So then we'll give them a pass, but it's not a pass forever. It's when it's readily achievable. Same thing with the 20% disproportionality rule. And in Texas, we have to go through a variance process. You have to go to the state and prove that it's more than 20% of your costs and you can't do it. And then they give you permission to postpone it. But in other places that don't have this, and this Department of Justice is the only one that gets involved, you have to make sure your owner of the building is aware that they should document it. They should say, okay, and my plan is to eventually fix these things, but right now I don't have the budget, and you should help them document it and maybe get an expert to give them assessment. But that's really what it is. It's not because of the civil rights law, they wanted to be fixed, but they do understand that not everything is readily achievable. And so they do give you a leeway with that. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Questions? Let me see if I have any.
Yeah. I see there's one in the chat.
There is? Okay, let me see. There are requests for private bathrooms through private offices. Oh, okay, great. So there's a question about a private bathroom. I wrote a blog about it. There are certain things, and you might want to go to my website and then look and type private bathrooms or private, and it'll come up. There are rules that apply to private bathrooms, and there's rules that don't. And also, what is a private bathroom? So if you have a corridor and you have a bathroom off of the corridor and you put the word private bathroom, that's not a private bathroom according to the ADA. Private bathrooms are only bathrooms that access through a private office for one person. So if you have a multiple office, person, if you have a room with multiple offices and you have your share bathroom, that's also not a private bathroom. So, so there are certain things that you need to comply with, certain things you don't, like the lavatory doesn't have to have a knee space or height. You do have to have clearance around the toilet. You don't need grab bars. There's certain things. So there's a lot of things that you want to, so go to my website, look at that blog. If you can't find it, let me know. But there's a lot of little things that go with that. So let me see if I'm going to go to the beginning and see if I have any other questions. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Any other questions? Please feel free to unmute if I didn't answer your question. I'm going down the list and see.
I have another one too.
Yes,
if you
please.
Don't mind.
Please, no.
So I'm in the Northeast, and there's a lot of existing buildings here, and there's a lot of need for more and more housing. And my question is, how do you know what triggers the need for adaptable units versus FHA versus elevators?
Good question.
3 or 4 stories.
So technically, the ADA doesn't cover residential unless it's a social service residential type of thing. So residential does fall under fair housing and under the building code. So if the building code that you're under has adopted the ANSI A117, you follow that. And that'll tell you how many type A units, type B units, and type A is fully accessible, type B is adaptable. But the fair housing only applies to new construction and first occupancy residential after 1991, I think so. I think that's right. 1991 or 92. Let me look at my, sorry. But anyway, so if you have like a warehouse, let's say you have a warehouse in your old buildings that used to be a warehouse and they've converted them into residential, like sometimes they do that. That's not first occupancy residential, and it does not follow fair housing. If you have, so that's actually something you have to look at. It's, let's see, sorry. Subject and things that are subject, I think it's 92. March of 91. First occupancy, March of 91. So if you have new construction building, residential building after March of 91, and first occupancy residential after March of 91, then it follows fair housing. So, okay, so I don't know if that answered your question. Okay, anything else?
And in particular, elevators. When do you know?
Sorry, elevators. Okay, so elevators. So I don't know if your question is when do you need an elevator or when you don't. Let me answer both. Okay, so if you have a building that has an elevator and it has to follow fair housing, every single unit in the building has to be fair housing unit. It's not as strict as ADA or ANSI, by the way. So it's not so hard to do to have a fair housing unit. So so when do you need an elevator? there is I can only speak for ADA. I don't know if IBC has a certain requirement for elevators. I'm not up on that, but I know that in the ADA, and I think that the IBC is similar. If you have a less than 3-story building, then you don't need an elevator. Unless it's an office of a healthcare provider or a shopping center, shopping mall, transportation depot. But if you haven't, what's the other one? I'm sorry. It's either less than 3 stories, or if you have more than 3 stories, if your stories are less than 3,000 square feet per story. So that's when you don't need an elevator. Okay, so there's an elevator exceptions. And you want to look up IBC, or if you're under the ADA, look up it's 206.4, I think. I think it's 206.4. But anyway, it's in the scoping section. It tells you where it's located, how many, whatever. So, all right, anything else? Any other ones? So I'll tell you, my email is right there in the screen. And I'm happy if you have questions after this, or if you want a copy of this presentation or whatever, shoot me a quick email. Right now, I'm actually behind reading my emails because I come back from my inspections and I was like 100 emails that I have to read. So I might not be able to this weekend I'll read them. But feel free to email me. Feel free to browse around my website. I have blogs that I've written about topics, and when I like Google, not Google, but search. How we use the word Google for everything. Search in my blog thing and see if there's a topic that I've answered before. Literally, I've been doing my newsletter once a month for 15 years now, ever since my daughter was born. So I've had lots of newsletters that I've written, and it's just once a month I do a little tip of some accessibility things. So anyway, I don't want to keep you guys any more than I need to. I've enjoyed talking to you guys.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have one quick question. I'm not sure if you saw it in the chat.
Oh, I don't know.
But that's okay. I can ask it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to check that for those door maneuvering clearances, those multiple diagrams that were there.
Yes.
Any one of those, if they are applicable, that makes the door compliant, correct?
Correct. So I'll go through it real quick. I guess maybe this one would be like, okay, that.
Yes.
So yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
It depends on what you are, your direction. You see that arrow? The arrow is telling you how you approach the door, and that is what determines how much space you need. So if you're approaching the door on a forward way or a side, and if you're approaching it on the hinge or on the latch, so that's kind of how. Yes.
So, so where it gets sometimes tricky, just with how the space is planned or laid out, what I usually run into is the forward, the forward approach, generally at the pull side, and sometimes I have to use a side approach, just because I don't have the 5 feet. So I have to go with the 4'6", and that's acceptable, correct?
That's acceptable, yes. And it's also acceptable to turn around and face forward. So if you're going down the hallway and you're approaching a hinge, but the hallway is big enough where you can have a forward approach, that's good too. A person can basically turn around and face forward. So it doesn't have, just because I'm coming toward the hinge doesn't mean that I have to stay there. And that's why I don't understand exactly this one, the little D. I don't understand that one, because what if I have, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll ask the Department of Justice, or the Access Board, because I have 5 feet, right? So I can technically, if I could, maybe that's what it is. If there's enough room to turn around, I could be in a forward position, and then I only need 18 inches instead of 36. So I'm not sure why this exactly. I don't know. I have to kind of ask that question, because it's the same dimensions as your forward approach, but it's making me give you 36 inches instead of 18. I'm not sure.
Right. I almost feel like there's one diagram that's I've seen, which is probably missing, but I've seen something that gives me a 24 inch. So it's a side approach. to the latch side, I believe, and it tells me 24 inches
But
and
let me see if I have.
54.
Let me see if I have that. Let me see. No, I see there's a second page.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
there's a
think
second page.
maybe
I
that
can
might.
stop sharing for a minute and go to my thing and then share now. Hang on. Let me share my
Okay,
standard.
thank you.
Yeah, sure. Where is it? Here it is. Okay, I'm gonna share this one, and I'm sorry. I was looking for, helping someone with the assembly seating this morning. Okay.
Oh, wow.
That's another one. Okay, sorry. I'm gonna go to mine. So I'll go a little faster. Okay, 404 section. Okay, so this is the one I was showing you the whole time. There's a second page.
Yes,
This one.
Yes.
Okay, so this one you're talking about this one, the H.
I am correct. Yes, I
Okay,
think
and then,
that's the
so
one.
yeah, H, yeah, so if you have 48 inches and you're approaching it on the latch side, all you need is 24 inches on the
Yes,
yeah.
because I have something in front of the door that prevents me from
From
getting the
having a
5 feet.
Mhm.
So sometimes I have to do this, and I just wanted to make sure that any of these, once I
Yes.
have any of these, the door is compliant
And
essentially.
I want you to notice something, and I didn't talk about
Okay.
I didn't talk about this, but I want to make sure you understand. I want you to read the bottom. Okay, so latch, approach, pool side. But now I want you to
Mhm.
letter I.
Oh, the closer and
Yes,
the
says latch, approach,
yeah.
pool side, that with a door that's provided, a closer and a latch. So then that means that now you need 54 inches. So don't
Correct.
you look at this one and say, okay, well, I have 48 inches.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you have a closer, you need 54 inches. So
Right.
be careful that you don't
Yes.
miss those. Because,
Miss that.
yeah, because it happens a lot.
Yeah, but I'm glad actually you pointed that out, because that was another thing that, so it is a closer and latch. It's not,
Yes, both. Right.
it's not, because now I do a lot of hospital health cares. So
Mhm.
the patient toilets which are attached or en suite within the room typically will not have a closer. They
No,
only have a
right. Then it
latch.
doesn't matter. And then
So
sometimes
then
then sometimes they have a spring hinge, and that's also it's not a closer. A
correct,
spring hinge is not a closer. Right.
got it. So they have a latch, obviously.
Latch is okay. Latch you can use letter H. So it has to be both latch and closer.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay, good. Sorry, there's so much of
I know.
this fine print
I know.
that you read and then you read again and then you find something new. So
I know.
thank you. I appreciate
Welcome.
it.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thanks so much.
Welcome. You're welcome, guys. Anything else?
Marcy?
Yeah.
Oh, Marcy, hi. This is Michelle Strass. I wanted to circle back to Christie's question about when an elevator is required in a multifamily building.
Yes.
I'm almost positive, but Christy, check the stretcher requirements in the IBC, because I know for a fact you can do a 3-story walk-up building and an elevator is not required. Once you hit 4 stories,
Right.
I think what triggers the elevator is the travel distance for emergency personnel when they need to use a stretcher. And that's when an elevator is required. I'm almost positive that's what it is. It's just been a long time since I've looked it up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, so yeah, it's different than
You're
the
welcome.
Very good. I love this group. You guys help each other. I love it. It's awesome. Anything
Thank you.
else?
And
Yeah.
I don't have any more questions.
Good. I don't think there's any more questions. Well, then I'm happy to do this again later in the year if you need, because some people were out of town or whatever. But thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me do this. And it's nice to meet you guys. And I look
Thank you.
forward to seeing you again on Facebook.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Marcy. This was really helpful. It was a great
Good.
presentation.
I'm very glad.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Good job. How do I get all this? So how do I get the chat information? Do you know how to do this chat thing?
Do not know anything about that.
Okay, so they gave me AIA numbers and emails, but I don't know how to get this from to save. Select all. Ah, maybe I'll do that. Select all. Guess what you're gonna do?
Oh, goody.
Yay! You're gonna make me certificates.
Oh, I haven't done that yet.
Okay. Come on.